Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. One morning, my bank app showed a balance of $14.62. I knew I hadn't bought anything, but my daughter had. The number sat on the screen like a bruise, not bleeding, not dramatic, just the yellow-purple proof of pressure applied a little too long. $14.62. I could see my reflection in the black glass of the phone. The soft lines of 66 years. The faint white seam of the scar where my husband's wedding ring grazed my cheek the day we moved the piano. His laugh echoing from a decade ago. It felt obscene to see my face and that number together. I'd spent years tucking money into slow, stubborn accounts. Small CDs, a high yield here, an old savings there. Like planting bulbs every fall and trusting the spring. I was going to use it to take the trip art, and I used to whisper about when he still had breath. Lisbon first, then a night train to Porto, a ferry, a cliff road, codfish, and strong coffee. We were going to argue about maps and laugh at our terrible Portuguese. He died with the guidebook on his nightstand, the paper soft as a handkerchief from thumbing. The phone buzzed in my palm. Unusual activity detected, the bank announced cheerfully. The living room smelled like yesterday's coffee and lemon furniture polish. The morning news murmured to itself about storms that missed us and stocks I didn't own. I sat in Art's old recliner, the leather cool against my calves. I didn't cry. I've never been a big crier. Even at the funeral, my tears came in neat small parcels, one at a time, like I was paying down a debt. 2 months before the $14.62 morning, Jenny had arrived with 2 suitcases, a basket of dying succulents, and a face that tried to be brave. "Just until I get on my feet," she said, standing on the porch in that denim jacket I remember buying at the outlet when she was 13. 34 now, hair too blonde at the edges, like a mistake left in too long. She smelled like coconut lotion and the sharp, sour edge of a laundromat. I hugged her and felt her ribs and told myself that love was a muscle you keep using even when it pulls. Living with your grown child is a strange choreography. I made the guest room up with the blue quilt and put a fresh bar of soap on the sink like a hotel. She left her shoes in a rubble pile by the door and ate cereal at midnight with the lights all on, like a child who feared the dark had hired an electrician. In the mornings, I'd hear the shower start and stop like a stuttering sentence, and then the slam of the front door as she ran out for a thing. We had good days. Reruns of the cooking show we used to mock, a short drive to the thrift store where she tried on jackets and called me her fashion consultant. She called me Ma, more than Mum, like she was practicing a softer vowel. Then she brought him. "Ma, this is Dane," she said one Friday evening, stepping aside like a curtain. He had the kind of smile that knew exactly how many teeth to show. A white t-shirt under a clean flannel, jeans that fit too well to be cheap. The smell of expensive aftershave rubbed with drugstore deodorant. He carried a bottle of wine with a label in a language I didn't recognize and held it like a peace offering, like he already assumed there was a war. "Ms. Alvarez," he said, shaking my hand with both of his like a politician. "I've heard so much. I don't do small talk anymore." I handed him the corkscrew. We ate pasta with jar sauce, and he told a story about a business deal that went sideways because a partner misunderstood the terms. He laughed after the word misunderstood, like the joke was that anyone could misunderstand money. Jenny's eyes flicked to him, proud. I watched his hands, large, warm, squared off at the fingertips, a pale crescent scar along the thumb web, the hands of a boy who learned early how to open things that weren't his. When he looked down, a seam of tension tightened along his jaw. I know that look. I spent 30 years in an insurance office listening to men explain why the policy language didn't apply to them. After that, he was around a lot. Sometimes he came with groceries, steak, cherries out of season, bread from the good bakery, spreading them on the counter like an apology. Sometimes he only came with his laugh, which was bigger than the room. "We're working on a project," Jenny told me one night, eyes dancing. "It's kinda hush-hush." I nodded. People who have nothing love secrets. They make poverty feel like a disguise. The first time I noticed the withdrawal, it was a dripping faucet of a thing. $40 from checking. A note. Zell J.A. I thought I had paid the gardener and forgotten. The second was $120. ATM withdrawal. I never use cash. I don't like the way it makes a purse heavy. I asked Jenny at breakfast, stirring eggs in the pan while the butter made small galaxies around the edges. "Hey, honey, did you happen to use my card? There's a little weirdness." She didn't look up. "Ma, I told you. I set up autopay for the Wi-Fi. I probably clicked the wrong account. I'll fix it. That app is dumb." "Okay," I said, because sometimes mothering is just choosing the smaller argument. I took a plate to the table and watched her eat, quick, anxious mouthfuls like she had to get ahead of something. I thought about calling the bank then. I thought about printing statements and using a pen to circle charges like we used to do at work when a claim smelled like gasoline. I thought about Art shaking his head at me from the doorway, saying in that tired voice, "Lena, you're not a detective. Let it go." I put it off. 2 weeks later, Jenny and Dane left for a networking event in Santa Barbara or Santa Cruz, somewhere with an S that looked good on Instagram. He kissed the top of my hand on his way out like he was thinking of buying it. "You're good people," he said. "We'll bring you back seashells." "Bring me a receipt," I said lightly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. His eyes paused a second too long on my face. Then the laugh, like a cue from an audience. The night after they left, I slept badly, rolling from cool side to warm side, my mind catching on the snags of small thing after small thing. The missing box of checks I'd been sure was in the desk drawer. The second set of keys Jenny swore she'd never seen. At 3:10 a.m., I got up and drank water in the dark kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum like a bored insect. I pulled open the drawer and took out the folder where I keep the accounts. The credit union, the savings bank with the old lady name, the brokerage that had sent me a birthday card with a stylized anchor. I put them on the table and smoothed them like napkins. The morning put a pale square of sun on the tile. I made coffee. The app logged me out twice, like a stubborn child being called to the car. When it let me in, there it was, $14.62. Savings, $0.00. CD, closed. Brokerage, pending transfer. Notes, transfers authorized. I don't know why I opened each one like a door when I could already smell the empty rooms. Maybe a body looks different from every angle, and you need all of them to say it's dead. I called the number on the back of the card. "I didn't authorize these transfers," I said. The woman on the other end had a voice like melted butter and policy. She told me a story about devices and IPs and text messages to confirm. "We show confirmation from the primary number on file ending in 61, she said. "My number ends in 31. I pictured Jenny at the kitchen table holding my phone, laughing at a meme, thumbing an "okay" without reading it. "Ma?" she'd called through the bathroom door a week earlier. "Can I borrow your phone?" Mine's dead. Oh. Water beat the tile. I'd yelled, "Sure, top drawer." and the word sure rode the steam right out of my mouth. On the TV, some judge show audience gasped at a betrayal they'd already been told about in the intro. I turned it off. The house felt like a suitcase someone had packed in a hurry. I texted Jenny. Then I called. The first ring was a chirp. The second was a blunt sound like a dropped coin. Then a fast, flat voice. "This customer is unavailable." I called again. The third time it went straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's me," I said into the quiet. "Call me." My voice sounded like I was explaining a recipe that needed only one more ingredient. At noon, a message arrived from an unknown number. No words, just a photo of a palm tree and a sliver of ocean. The horizon slightly crooked, as if taken in a hurry. I stared at it until the edges of the screen looked hot. "Beautiful," I typed. Then I put the phone face down and made myself a sandwich I had no appetite for. The mustard cleared my nose and made my eyes prick. I still did not cry. By 5, I'd gone through the motions of panic. Searched drawers, checked pockets, opened the laundry basket as if money might be balled up with socks. I stood in the doorway of Jenny's room and looked at the bed she had left unmade. The book face down on the pillow to keep its place. I went to the closet and ran my hand along the clothes. A scent of her shampoo rose like a ghost. The blue quilt on the bed looked suddenly like a flag. I folded it in half. While I folded, I heard my father's voice from long ago, that immigrant Spanish still clinging to his consonants. "Lina, cuando te roban, te enseñan. When they rob you, they teach you." At 7, the bank sent another notification. "Incoming transfer pending 78 cents. A penny sweep, a test. They drained the big buckets first, then combed the small pools. Professional, efficient, not personal. The words we use to excuse cruelty. That was when the first real feeling arrived, a low iron weight behind my breastbone. Not rage, something older. Not disappointment, something drier. A knowledge. I had been chosen for this. Not for who I am, but for who I appear to be. A widow in a quiet house with soft shoes. A woman whose eyes go to her lap when men laugh too loud. A car passed outside, bass thudding. A dog barked twice and stopped. I washed the single plate I'd used all day and set it in the rack to dry. Then I went to the desk and opened the bottom drawer. There is a drawer in every house where the past is neatly folded. Mine held a file labeled "Retirement," a rubber-banded bundle of business cards, and the yellow legal pad I had carried the last year I worked. I took out the pad. The paper smelled like the back rooms of offices. Dust, toner, old coffee. I uncapped a pen. I wrote, in block letters the way we did when we needed to be understood by strangers, TIMELINE. Under it, I wrote dates, sums, names, numbers. Then I wrote, Jenny, Dane. I drew boxes around their names and lines to the charges. I wrote, Wi-Fi autopay. I wrote, spare keys. Then, under all of it, in smaller letters that belonged to a different life, I wrote the first 3 names I would call. I closed the drawer softly. The house exhaled. In the dark window, my reflection straightened her shoulders and looked like a woman I'd almost forgotten. Steady, boring, patient as rain. I'm the kind of woman who reads contracts line by line for sport, who sends certified letters, who brings cookies to the neighbors and remembers which one is allergic to nuts, who understands that revenge is only delicious when it tastes like due process. I turned off the kitchen light, and the room changed shape. On the counter, the bottle of wine Dane had brought, the label still unreadable, glowed faintly. I considered opening it. Then I laughed, small, a little bitter, and put it back in the pantry behind the flour. You'll do for a celebration, I told it. Not for grief. The phone buzzed once more. We noticed a login from a new device. I slid the alerts off the screen like crumbs. $14.62. Enough, I thought, to buy a decent breakfast tomorrow. Enough to get me across town. Enough to make the first call. Okay, I said into the quiet house, to the woman in the black glass, to the child I had raised, and the man she had chosen. Okay. The next morning, I woke before the alarm. Habit, not necessity. I haven't had to be anywhere at 6:30 a.m. for 8 years. Still, my body keeps that insurance office rhythm. Coffee first, hair pulled back, the slow satisfaction of crossing something off a list before most people are awake. The kitchen was cold in the early light, my slippers whispering against the tile. I made toast, the last of the good sourdough, and poured the coffee into my oldest mug, the one with a faded skyline of Chicago. Art bought it for me on a layover. I'd been too practical to buy souvenirs for myself back then. Now, everything I own has become one. At 7:02, I made the first call. Darla, I said when she answered. There was a pause, that brief shuffle of memory before an old friend places your voice. Lena, my God, it's been forever. 23 years since you left the department, I said. And you're calling me before 8? You're either dying or you need a cop. I need a cop who owes me a favor. Darla wasn't just an old friend. She was a detective I'd worked with back when I was the liaison for insurance fraud cases. She's the one who taught me to look for the low-value hook, the little transaction that tests whether anyone's watching. I gave her the short version. Savings drained, brokerage cleared out, they're moving it fast. My daughter and her boyfriend. I don't want this public yet. She made a sound like she was dragging a chair across the floor. I can't make it disappear from the system, but I can slow walk the paperwork. You've got 48 hours to hand me something solid before I have to log it officially. That was more than I'd hoped for. I'll give you better than solid. The second call was to Manny, an old co-worker who'd retired to Arizona but still did consulting for big insurance firms. Manny has the brain of a bloodhound and the morals of a cat, loyal only to his own comfort, but capable if you make it worth his time. Lena, sweetheart, he said when he picked up. To what do I owe the thrill? I need to know where $118,000 went after it left my accounts, and I need it yesterday. He whistled low. You finally pull that bank job we used to joke about. I wish. This is family. That shut him up. Send me the transaction list. I'll trace what I can through the clearinghouses. The third call was to my cousin Rosa, who's been at a major telecom company for 15 years. She can get phone records without so much as a squeak in the system. You're calling me at work, she said in Spanish, so this must be bad. It is. I need locations from 2 phone numbers. Lena. Her voice carried all the weight of family shame. Your daughter's one of them? Yes. The other's a man named Dane. She didn't ask questions. Text me the numbers. I'll see what towers they've hit in the last 72 hours. By 9 o'clock, I'd already moved from panic to procedure. It's a familiar shift, the way your mind hardens into a tool when there's work to do. I printed the bank statements, stapled them by date, and wrote in the margins. The ink smelled sharp, clean. At noon, Rosa called back. Santa Barbara was a lie. They're in Bakersfield. Motel off 99. Both phones pinged the same tower 3 times in the last day. Bakersfield. Close enough to drive, far enough to feel like they'd vanished. By evening, Manny had his first breadcrumb. Your money's moving through a Paysure business account registered to a Shell LLC in Nevada. Owner on paper is a 22-year-old college dropout. Guess what? He's Dane's cousin. Of course he is. That night, I didn't stand in doorways or search for missing things. I knew what was missing. I made a new list. Every asset they could possibly hold in their own names. Cars, electronics, even the damn seashells they'd promised. I fell asleep with the legal pad open beside me, the smell of ink in the air. My father's words circled back. When they rob you, they teach you. Only now I was starting to think maybe I'd been a slow learner. Until now. By the fifth day, my house looked less like a home and more like a war room. The dining table was buried under neat stacks of manila folders, each with its own label in thick black ink. Bank, telecom, civil, assets. A corkboard I'd dug out of the garage leaned against the wall, dotted with pushpins and scribbled notes. The smell of coffee had soaked into the air and into me. I'd been drinking too much of it. But I didn't care. This wasn't chaos. This was control. One page at a time. Marta called first thing. "Got something for you," she said without preamble. Santa Barbara PD ran Dane's name through their system. No current warrants there, but 2 counties over. He's got a pending fraud investigation. Small business owner swears he ran off with $20,000 in prepaid catering fees. I wrote it down. Is there an arrest warrant? Not yet, but it's active enough that if he shows his face in the wrong place... She let the thought trail off. Perfect. I didn't need to catch him myself. I just needed to move him into the right place and let gravity take over. Manny emailed me a spreadsheet that afternoon. Every line was a movement of my stolen money, deposits, transfers, cash withdrawals, and then a gem, a $4,300 purchase at a small auto dealership in Fresno. They're dumb enough to put it in their name? I asked over the phone. Manny chuckled. In her name, actually. The pink slip's probably still at the dealer. You move fast, you can freeze the title. It took exactly 2 phone calls to file the civil claim. One to the county clerk, one to a process server who owed me from back in my insurance days. Cash or check? He asked. Check, I said. And send me a copy of the proof of service. By day 7, Rosa had more tower data. They'd left Bakersfield and were now bouncing between Fresno and a smaller town nearby. Hotels, gas stations, a few fast food pings. I could almost see their trail on the map. A slow, hungry loop with no real destination. They're not going overseas yet, Rosa said. They're circling. Good, I said. Let them get comfortable. I started making my other calls then, the ones Jenny wouldn't see coming. First, to the bank's loss mitigation department. I'd been polite with the branch manager, but here I leaned in harder. I have a pending law enforcement report, and I'm filing a civil complaint, I said. You need to flag her accounts under internal fraud watch. There was a pause. You're talking about your daughter's accounts? Yes. Any asset or balance in her name is potentially tied to stolen funds. That's your liability if you let it move. They put me on hold. When they came back, their voice was careful. We'll initiate a provisional hold, pending legal confirmation. At night, I found myself thinking about Jenny as a little girl. The way she'd curl into my side on the couch with her hair still damp from the bath, smelling like shampoo and safety. How she used to slip notes under my bedroom door that said things like, "I'm sorry for yelling in shaky handwriting." I tried to imagine her face when the debit card stopped working, when the hotel desk told her the payment wouldn't go through. Would she call me? Cry? Curse? Or would she look at Dane and realize the ground under them wasn't solid anymore? It hurt. I let it hurt for a while, but I didn't let it stop me. By day 10, everything was in motion. Marta had a detective in Fresno watching for Dane's name to pop up in the system. Manny had traced nearly $90,000 of my money into 3 separate accounts, all connected through that Nevada LLC. Rosa had confirmed their phones were still in the same area. I sat down that night and drafted the final piece, a short, precise text to be sent from a blocked number when the time was right. It only had 3 words. Check your account. That time was coming. I could feel it, like the quiet just before the tide turns. On the morning of day 14, I woke without an alarm again. No coffee yet, no radio, just the sound of the refrigerator humming and the clock ticking over to 6:01. I sat at the kitchen table with my legal pad and folders, reading over everything one last time. It felt like reviewing a case file before a hearing. Not excitement, not fear, just a readiness that settled in my bones. The plan was simple now. Everything that needed to be in place was in place. Marta had her detective on standby in Fresno. Manny had provided the account routing details, and the civil claim was already stamped and filed, triggering the court's provisional freeze. Rosa had timed it perfectly. The minute I gave her the word, she could push the telecom logs to law enforcement in the county where Dane had his pending fraud investigation. By 9:42, Rosa texted, "They just checked into the Motel Westway in Clovis. Paid with a debit card in her name." Bingo. I called Marta from the kitchen, looking out at the neighbor's cat stalking across my lawn. "It's time." "On it," she said. "Give me 20 minutes and send the text." I opened a new message, switched to the blocked number app Manny had told me about, and typed those 3 words. Check your account. Then I hit send. I pictured it in my head. Jenny and Dane in their motel room, maybe still in bed, sunlight cutting through thin curtains. Her picking up her phone, squinting at the message. Maybe thinking it was from a friend. Maybe already uneasy. Then the moment she'd open her banking app. I didn't need to see it to know what came next. I knew the procedure. The frozen balance. The system error that looked like a glitch until the second account failed, and the third, and the hotel desk told them the payment wouldn't process. Marta called back at 11:06. "We got him," she said, and there was satisfaction in her voice that I hadn't heard in years. "Clovis PD had the warrant ready from that other county. Your daughter was with him. She's not under arrest for your case, yet, but the civil freeze means she can't touch a dime." My heart didn't race. It didn't break either. It just settled, like something had clicked back into alignment. By the next day, I had the official notice from the court. Civil judgment pending. Assets frozen until hearing. Manny's latest update showed my funds moving back in small increments from the seized accounts, pending the legal review. Jenny called that night, from the jail's monitored line. I watched her name blink on the caller ID. I let it ring until the machine picked up, and then I deleted the message without listening. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. I poured myself a small glass of the wine Dane had brought the first night we met. Sat at the table with it. No music, no TV. Just me, the quiet, and the knowledge that they'd chosen me for the wrong reasons, and underestimated who they were dealing with. I sipped slowly. This was worth saving. The court hearing was a formality. Jenny didn't show. Her attorney filed something about emotional hardship and mitigating circumstances. The judge barely looked up from the file before signing the order in my favor. A full financial judgment. Asset recovery in progress. 2 weeks later, my accounts were whole again. Not quite the same amounts. Interest lost, fees to pay. But enough. enough to feel the weight of it back in my hands, enough to know I had won on my own terms. I didn't tell anyone when I booked the ticket. The airline website asked for a destination, and my fingers typed it almost without thought. Lisbon. The place Art and I had whispered about in the dark. The morning I left, the house was still and clean. The blue quilt was folded neatly on the guest bed. I'd washed it weeks ago, but I couldn't bring myself to put it back in the closet. Sunlight streamed in through the kitchen window, catching the glass of the corked wine bottle Dane had brought. I left it there, a little reminder of the taste of victory. At the airport, I carried just one suitcase. No folders, no manila envelopes, no lists. I had my passport, my ticket, and a small leather notebook. Not for timelines, just for thoughts. Lisbon smelled of salt and bread, and the faint tang of diesel from the trams. I walked streets that tilted like they'd been pulled from a dream. Tiles under my feet, like a million tiny stories. I drank coffee so strong it made my hands shake, and I let them. I watched the ocean from the edge of a cliff road, the wind tearing at my hair, and thought of Art. Not with the ache of loss, but with the warmth of keeping a promise. One afternoon, I sat at a cafe in the sun and wrote in my notebook, "I am not who they thought I was." And under it, "I am more." Jenny has tried calling 3 more times from jail. Each time I let it ring. I'm not ready to speak to her, and maybe I never will be. That's not vengeance. That's survival. I've learned that justice doesn't always come from rage. Sometimes it comes from patience, from the quiet gathering of facts, from letting the truth do the work, and from walking away when the work is done. On my last night in Lisbon, I stood on the balcony of my small hotel, a glass of Vinho Verde in my hand, the city lights trembling on the water. I thought about the $14.62 that started it all. The number doesn't sting anymore. It feels like a bookmark, a reminder of where the chapter turned. I raised my glass, not to them, not even to Art this time, but to myself. Because I am here. Because I am free. Because I am finally living my own life.